So Dave Dombrowski clarified some of his comments from his end-of-season presser, but did he make matters better or worse for the Philadelphia Phillies?
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Locked On Phillies is your number one place for daily Philadelphia Phillies content Monday through Friday. You might know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been on air over at 97.5 The Fanatic, doing sports talk radio here in Philadelphia for over 6 years. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for the past 4 seasons, and this is now my 4th year as the host of Locked On Phillies. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Dave Dombrowski went on Foul Territory, which is some great baseball content out of the folks at Foul Territory. And he was asked a bunch of questions about his end-of-season comments. He clarified some comments. He doubled down on others. And did he make matters better or worse for the Phillies than what it seemed like when he put together what I called an uninspiring end-of-season press conference? We're going to lead off the show with that. We're also going to then turn that into a conversation about this year's World Series, which begins tonight. Blue Jays, Dodgers. And from a Phillies lens, or maybe even just a all the other teams not in it lens, what could the outcome of this World Series mean for baseball? And then we are going to do a preview of the free agent class for this offseason. Not who's going to fit, not who the Phillies should go after. We will get to that stuff. But who is available? What names are out there? And what level of free agent class is this? We got to start baseline, and then we will build up from there. But let's talk Dave Dombrowski first, because he had some very uninspiring comments in his end-of-season press conference. I broke down his and Rob Thompson's answers to the assembled media a couple days after the season had come to an end. And I was not pleased with 90% of what I heard, because it felt very defeated is not the right word. It almost didn't sound defeated. It sounded like, oh, it was out of our hands. Like we had no control over it. It wasn't even passing the buck like it's somebody else's fault. It was more the fates did not have it in the cards for the Philadelphia Phillies. And that's not what this fan base needed to hear. And there were also questions brought up about the future of Bryce Harper, because he had talked about him. We'll see if he gets back to being an elite player again. What's the payroll going to be? How do you attack that? There were plenty of things that were asked of Dave Dombrowski in this second time talking since the Phillies season ended that gave him opportunity to clear some things up. So let's start first and foremost with the Bryce Harper comments, because that's what people are running with. I already told you he's not getting traded. There's a 0% chance. I would be absolutely dumbfounded if Bryce Harper is not a Philadelphia Philly next year. Like it is, to me, outside the realm of possibility in this universe that he's not playing baseball in Philly next year. And Dave Dombrowski pretty much said as much. Now, he clarified his comments and said, when I looked at this as like not an elite year for Bryce, he is one of the top players in the sport. And for him, a quote unquote elite year is MVP contention, right? One of those top like 5 to 10 players. Like that's when Bryce Harper is elite. And he wasn't that this year. And no one's arguing against that fact. And he said, Bryce is still a great player, one of the best players in baseball. And no, he's not getting traded. That's what Dave Dombrowski said. This is a guy who said it's likely Jose Alvarado is back. This is a guy who said it's not likely Max Kepler is back. This is a guy who said we'll see when it comes to Nick Castellanos. So for him to definitively say we are not trading Bryce Harper, are we done now, folks? Can we move on from that one? Okay, good. Now, I'm not saying things are great between Bryce Harper and the Phillies organization, because we've seen the contract stuff from him in the past of he wants an extension. He didn't get an extension. We heard Dave Dombrowski's comments about, hey, we'll see if he gets back to that elite level. But he's not going anywhere. So we can settle that one down. Dombrowski also gave a really interesting comment about payroll and what they're looking to do. Now, he said he proposed something to John Middleton, as all presidents of baseball operations do. They go to their owner, they propose a plan. The owner says, okay, that works within our budgetary constrictions, or, hey, you have more room, or, yeah, we got to tighten it up a little bit. I'm not going to give you that much money to work with. And it sounds like him and John Middleton are on the same page from his comments, Dave Dombrowski's comments on foul territory. But it was really interesting how he framed the answer. He talked about re-signing their players. Guys like Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto, Ranger Suarez, Harrison Bader, like guys like that. And he said, we're not going to be able to sign all of them. We're just not. It's not realistic. Or I think he said we're probably not going to be able to sign all of them. I'll translate. They're not signing all those guys. They'll bring back some of them. But that was the first thing he mentioned. Normally, when you answer a question, your top of mind first response is the highest thing on your priority list. So that says what Dave Dombrowski kind of told us. Kyle Schwarber, priority. JT Realmuto, priority. Figuring out what's going on with those guys. And then he talked about, well, we do have Aiden Miller, Andrew Painter, Justin Crawford, who seem to be ready for the next level. He said Painter and Crawford, basically, we're expecting them to be on the team next year, right? We plan for them to contribute at the major league level, was the feeling when he talked about those players. But when he talked about Aiden Miller, it was more, we'll see what he is this year. So not an expected contribution right off the bat, at least. But he talked about re-signing players and young players and didn't really bring up signing free agents, which is exactly what I said to you when I broke down this press conference. The restrictions of the payroll that the Phillies had this past year being the same as the payroll or close to the payroll they're going to have this next year accounts for the increase in pay for Kyle Schwarber if they re-sign him and the decrease in pay if they re-sign JT Realmuto on a cheaper short-term deal. And outside of that, they're not going to have a lot of room to work with. There's no, hey, we're going to go throw a lot of money at some free agents out there and try and bring in another star. That was not the vibe of Dave Dombrowski's second chance at talking about this. So I feel pretty confident in saying if you're looking for a home run swing, an out-of-nowhere star acquisition to take this team over the top, you're not getting it this offseason. Part of me understands that because of the money they already have roped into some of their big-time players. Part of me is disappointed by that because there's a team in the World Series tonight, the Los Angeles Dodgers, who in my estimation are going to beat the brakes off the Toronto Blue Jays. They're the much better team. And they are the much better team because when they got 1 star, they said more. When they got 2 stars, they said more. 3 stars, 4 stars, 5 stars, 1 billion stars. There's more stars on the Los Angeles Dodgers than there are in the sky at night. And that's what you're competing with. You have to play at the level of the other top teams, or even just the one top team, because no other team's doing it like the Dodgers. And Dombrowski is looking at a situation where what the Phillies have is what they're going to have. They're going to try and work on some stuff to change the roster around, but it will be more fringe moves. And that means you're going to have to gamble and you're going to have to hit. And if you don't, we're going to be looking at a lot of the same conversation as we did this past season. It's not a bad thing for a team that won 96 games, but it's not what Phillies fans want to hear right now. And speaking of the Dodgers, because Dave Dombrowski's end-of-year media availability was covered, littered with references to how the Dodgers are such a great team and how we ran into this team that they're the defending World Series champions and they got all these stars and everything. It was more credit to the Dodgers than the Phillies fell short. And you know what? Maybe when everything's all said and done, that looks more true than what it felt like at the time. Dave Dombrowski did an interesting thing. He both doubled down on that commentary and kind of backtracked to something I think Phillies fans should want to hear. Because he talked about, we were so close to a team like the Dodgers. And he listed all the ways that the Phillies lost games, a home run given up here in game one, a bunt that was not executed correctly in game two. By the way, if there was anyone who still had that theory that maybe that wasn't called by the Phillies and that was Bryce and Stott doing that, Dave Dombrowski said, we put on the bunt. So there's proof right there. But anyway, the situation in game four with the play at the plate and Ryan Kirkering and everything like that. So he went with the we're close conversation, which should make Phillies fans roll their eyes. But unlike the press conference at the end of the season, he said in this foul territory interview, but they're not going anywhere. So we have to find ways to get better. And that is baseline, right? That is the lowest level of expectation for a team that does not win the World Series, is that the person in charge of your front office says, we need to get better. But for a guy that just a week ago seemed resigned to, hey, this team is what it is. We were close. We'll hang our hat on that. At least he did say the part that Phillies fans want him to say. But the fact that everything else in his comments is pointing to not being able to execute on that, whether it's payroll restrictions, current contract restrictions, not having the ability to go out and bring in players the level of which the Dodgers have across their lineup to try and even things out. I'm not like sitting here saying, feel better about Dave Dombrowski and the Phillies offseason. But there were some important clarifications and some things that we learned from that. He also talked about Rob Thompson and how Rob Thompson controls the lineup, and he's got a good feel for that. And I still think he's a good manager, which we already knew he feels that way, because if he didn't, he wouldn't have a job. But some intriguing things from Dave Dombrowski that give a little bit more color to what he said, answering questions at the end of the season. But speaking of that World Series matchup, today it feels almost like Independence Day, right? The old movie where the world bands together against the aliens. One final fight to keep our type of life. But am I rooting for the aliens? I mean, I kind of said so earlier in the week. What are the implications of this World Series matchup? Because they're huge, especially for a team like the Philadelphia Phillies. Let's talk about our friends over at FanDuel first, because they've got a great promotion that's continually going on, and you got to check it out. Because if you're a new user for FanDuel, you can bet $5. If that bet hits, you can get $300 in bonus bets. And with the NFL season rolling along, Week 8 started last night with LA taking down Minnesota comfortably. I cashed in some money on that because I watched our Birds go out to Minnesota and beat them up through the air. There's a lot of ways to win on FanDuel. It's not just football. Hockey and basketball are back. You've got the World Series starting tonight, so baseball is still rolling. FanDuel has a lot of great ways for you to win. Now, what I do before you go all crazy is take that $5 if you're a new user and bet it on something safe, something that you believe strongly is going to win regardless of payout. It could be a lock bet, but you're going to get $300 in bonus bets. And then you use that on the risky picks, right? The ones you're like, maybe that could work out. I'm going to take a shot here. So what are you waiting for? There's a bunch of ways to win. Props, parlays, futures, money line, spread. Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. That's FanDuel.com. Let's also talk about our friends over at Rugiet, because confidence is important. And if you don't have it, you can feel it. And let's be real. Making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired. Or it happens to everyone. Well, when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support. a little extra added confidence. And that's where Rugiet comes in. Rugiet.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED, designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rugiet makes it easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor, 100% online, so there's no awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. If prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. The process is fast, simple, and most importantly, private, because this is a tough thing to talk about, especially in person. And it's all handled by real doctors, so you can trust that what you're getting is the right stuff. It's about confidence, connection, and getting back to the moments that matter. Visit Rugiet.com/LockedOnMLB to get 15% off your first order. That's Rugiet, RUGIET.com/LockedOnMLB. And don't forget to use that code. Again, it's LockedOnMLB, so they know we sent you. Rugiet, stop making excuses and start making moves. Let's talk about the World Series. I already told you, my rooting interest, Dodgers in 4. The more they beat up on the Blue Jays, the better the Phillies look. That might make me a loser. That might make me, I don't know, looking for some type of consolation prize, participation trophy. I understand that, but I can't tell you any different than how I actually feel. And I want to see that happen because I want to be able to look at the Phillies in a more positive light. As much as I'm talking about the team and covering the team, I root for the team. I was a Phillies fan before I sat behind this microphone. I will be a Phillies fan when I'm done sitting behind this microphone. So that's just how I am. Some of you may want to root for the Blue Jays out of spite and say, hey, that Dodgers team, man, I hate them. I'm mad they knocked us out. I can't root for them, the evil empire. So pick your rooting interest, but for me, I'm going with the Dodgers. And I do think the Dodgers win this series, and I think they win comfortably. Woo! Bless me. Thank me. I think they win this series in 4, maybe 5 games. Yeah, I'm looking at sweep or gentleman's sweep for the World Series. Maybe that's not enough credit to the Toronto Blue Jays, but I've long said that the winner of the World Series this year is going to come from the National League, and the Dodgers know what it takes to win at that level. But what does this World Series mean for baseball and for teams like the Philadelphia Phillies? Because the outcome is very important. We talked earlier in the week about the looming lockout of the 2027 Major League Baseball season. The CBA is up at the end of the 2026 season, and there's expectations that we're going to miss some of the 2027 season. We might miss all of the 2027 season for all we know right now. So, reminder of the sides. The owners, they want a salary cap under the guise, whether you believe it or not, of competitive balance. Salary cap, salary floor, make sure the teams are playing on a more even playing field to promote more parity in the sport. The players want to earn as much money as they can. And I do not blame them one bit. So a salary cap is completely anti-earning as much money as you can. Now, why would the owners want a salary cap to promote the parity of the sport, right? Well, a big part of the reason is the power of major market teams and their spending versus the power of mid to small market teams and their spending. Some of this is just flat out bad owners. And that's why I said earlier, whether you believe it or not, because some owners are just going to cry poor, even though they're not. And they'll never open their books and will never know whether or not they're making money, even though they are. And they'll say, I'm just in, I don't know. Let's take Pittsburgh, for example. I can't pay Paul Skeens. We're a mid-market like Pittsburgh. You could pay him. You're choosing not to because you want to make the most money possible. But whatever the case may be. The owner's case and public perception on this, if you think it's not important, you're wrong. Ultimately, we're not going to be privy to all the negotiations going on. But if you don't think public influence and how the perspective of Major League Baseball fans affects the way these negotiations are going to go, there will be outside pressure. Fans will take a side. And if the Dodgers win the World Series, the owners have a big-time weapon to use to say, You see this super team beating up on all your teams? Do you want that to continue? Fans of baseball? Dodgers fans, sure, probably. But do you really want the big boys to be the only ones who can play? Now, as Phillies fans, your answer to that might be, yeah, because we're one of the big boys. But at the end of the day, the Dodgers winning the World Series would be a win for the owners and Major League Baseball in their negotiations against the Players Association. If the Blue Jays go out there and win, that is a big-time win for the players because they can say, hey, look, you don't need a salary cap. You just need a smart front office and an owner willing to toss out a little bit of change, and you'll be able to find a way to victory. The plucky Blue Jays just took down the superstar Dodgers, right? There's so much more to this World Series, and I'll leave that to the folks on Locked On Dodgers and Locked On Blue Jays and Locked On MLB to break down the X's and O's of the World Series, and you should check that out if you want a good preview of what you're going to be watching over the next couple of days. But it's big for baseball because the narrative of what this sport is changes significantly whether the Blue Jays or Dodgers win. So watch with a little bit of a critical eye when you're watching the World Series for what the future of this sport can be. If you think it doesn't matter, you got your head in the sand. Now, don't have your head in the sand when it comes to free agents. That's what we're going to talk about coming up because I haven't yet talked about my plan for replacing all of these Phillies that I said should go or could go or will go. And a lot of people have been commenting, well, you got to have something. We're not quite going into fit yet, but we're going to go through the names of who's available and evaluate whether or not this is a high-level free agency class. Not all free agency classes are created equal, but I'll just give you a little tease here. I think we got a doozy in the 25-26 offseason. Let's talk about Prize Picks first, though, because every day we make decisions. But on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Playing Prize Picks is such a fun and simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown, and you're right in the game. Honestly, both of those two players, good to look at for this week. The Bills coming off 2 straight losses and then a bye week, playing the Carolina Panthers. Josh Allen should have a big day. Saquon, seeing his old team in the New York Giants, who beat up on the Eagles 2 Thursdays ago. Yeah, those are the guys you want to look at. But you can add a whole bunch of stuff. It takes a minute or less to put together a Prize Picks lineup, and they just added stacks. So if you want to ride with a single player, you can select their pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. It's the best. It makes it so much more fun. You have a rooting interest in games you don't normally have a rooting interest for, and you can make a little cash doing it. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Let's take a look at some free agents. We're going to, there's a good chance with the length of the Phillies offseason, thanks to them getting knocked out early, that we talk about a majority of these top names. Some don't really make fit sense. Some really make fit sense. Some have already been here. But where we're going to start is just looking at the top names that will be on the market this offseason. And you got to make sure that you're locked into Locked On Phillies day in and day out so you don't miss evaluations of all of these names. That's why you should be part of our Everydayers Club. Subscribe to our YouTube. It's free and easy to do that. Just hit that subscribe button if you're watching us on YouTube right now. It'll get you notifications when new episodes are posted, and that makes it easier for you to find our content. It helps us out. It helps you out. And you also get to see my outfits every day, which I was getting roasted on the radio. We broadcast on YouTube for our radio show as well. Apparently, they're saying I'm dressed like Big Dom of the Eagles today. I'm wearing like my Eagles like track jacket. But also, if you can't watch, you can listen. And we're available on Locked On Phillies wherever you get your podcasts. Please make sure you're rating and reviewing if you're checking us out in podcast form. And feel free to leave a comment on the YouTube once you subscribe. So I appreciate all you checking us out here on Locked On Phillies very, very much. Let's dive into these free agents, though, because it's a really good class of free agents in Major League Baseball. And some of them seem to fit pretty darn well with what the Phillies are doing. So I'm looking at a CBS Sports article here, breaking down the top 25 MLB free agents for this offseason. I'll argue the rankings a little bit, but Kyle Tucker is the first guy they have up there. Doesn't seem like the Cubs are going to re-sign Kyle Schwarber. And a reminder, there's no restricted free agent stuff here, right? These guys are all going to hit free agency. They may go back to their club, but other teams are going to have a chance to reach out with offers. So Kyle Tucker is a pretty darn talented outfielder. He only had 22 home runs and 73 RBIs this year, but he was banged up for part of the season in Chicago. He's a really special player that was great in Houston, was great when available for the Cubs. I would love to have him in the outfield for the Phillies. Home run swing. But next up, Alex Bregman, third base. If you're moving on from Alec Bohm, maybe. Hey, you never know. We know he's got a winning pedigree. He batted .273 this past year with 18 home runs and 62 RBIs. He's got more pop than Bohm will ever have. He's won World Series. Bo Bichette, shortstop of the Toronto Blue Jays. He's going to be playing in the World Series tonight. He's back from injury, but he hit .311 this year. He's been the AL hits leader multiple times. That dude's a tank. He's a great contact hitter, and he could play infield for the Philadelphia Phillies. Framber Valdez is going to be available. The Houston Astros, strong left-handed starter. Then we get to Kyle Schwarber 5. I don't believe Kyle Schwarber will be the number 5 free agent. I think he gets a little hurt by being just a DH, but 56 homers. We know how special he is. Cody Bellinger with the Yankees this year. He's a free agent. Pete Alonso, first baseman of the Mets. We know him well here in Philadelphia. He's a free agent. Hey, number 8 on this list, Ranger Suarez. He's a free agent. Dylan Cease will be on the market. JT Realmuto. The Phillies have 3 guys in the top 10. That shows you how big this offseason is for them trying to figure something out. Eugenio Suarez could have been a trade deadline target for the Phillies. He's going to be a free agent after going to the Mariners at the deadline via Arizona. Trent Grisham, another Yankee. That's some outfield help potentially that will be out there. Shane Bieber, going to be pitching in the World Series for the Blue Jays. He's out there. Michael King of the Padres. Zach Gallen of the Diamondbacks. Devin Williams of the Yankees. The Yankees have a bunch. Luke Weaver, another one on here. Josh Naylor, who was with the Seattle Mariners this year, was really big for them in the postseason. Ryan Helsley, who wasn't great with the Mets when they acquired him to be a bullpen force, but is a bullpen force. He's going to be a free agent. Merrill Kelly, who the Phillies will remember from the 2023 NLCS. There are some big-time names out here that could fit. Gleyber Torres, Jorge Polanco, Harrison Bader, another guy who is here, Ryan O'Hearn, Mike Yastrzemski. Those are just the top 25. This is a stacked free agent class, and there are a lot of outfielders available, which should be music to Phillies fans' ears if they believe that Dave Dombrowski is trying to pull a fast one when it comes to his talk about the payroll. Now, there's no guarantee. I want to say this just so I'm covering my bases. There's no guarantee that Dave Dombrowski is telling us the truth. Oh, yeah, we're looking at re-signing our own players. We're looking at our young players coming up from our minor league systems to help our club out. Dave Dombrowski, a big club guy. He doesn't say team. He says club. But anyway, there's a chance that he is not so much like putting out false information, like lying to us, but just kind of being intentionally, I guess he's lying. I mean, there's no other way to say it. There's a chance he could be lying to us. I was trying to be politically correct about it, so I'm not calling him a liar. But who is he to put his strategy out there for everybody to see and hear? It's not just Phillies fans that he talks to when he does those media availabilities. Other teams hear it. So maybe if you're one of those fans that think, well, Dombrowski is just not showing his cards. He's playing his cards close to the vest. And there's a big move coming. More power to fans that believe that. I do not. But there are certainly some names out there that could be impact makers. There are also names that, if the Phillies don't sign him, could be impact makers for other teams. that could change the landscape of baseball. I feel like we've been so focused on the Dodgers and the Phillies that we forget that other teams can win too. So a free agent class that's going to be incredibly intriguing to break down as the offseason continues. Next week, we are going to dive into that. Actually, you know what? We're going to have an episode tomorrow on Saturday, a special bonus weekend episode for you where we look through some of the best fits for the Philadelphia Phillies as far as free agents are concerned. And there's a lot of stuff to talk about right now, so you don't want to miss it. But if you think that Dave Dombrowski doesn't have the opportunity to add, or John Middleton doesn't have the opportunity to throw some money at another star, that is a fallacy. They can if they want to, but I don't know if they will. In fact, I don't think they will. And that's going to be the major question of this offseason. But that's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Once again, we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all of that great stuff that really helps us out. And I will talk to you tomorrow for a special Saturday edition of Locked On Phillies right here